consistent.
Welcome to The Basement.
People, but never letting people be there for me. Then I went into puberty, and a very confusing awakening started happening within me, and I realized I was physically attracted to guys, and I didn't know what to do with that. I just knew that it felt very dark and something that I should definitely not tell anyone about. And so I didn't. I pushed it down. I prayed, and I just tried to not give it any air, for the hope that if I just pushed it down long enough that someday it would die. And I pressed into ministry. I pressed into helping other people with their problems, with their pains, with their hurts, while most of the time ignoring my own. And this pattern kept going until 2014, and I got engaged, and then the relationship fell apart.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to The Basement. I'm Nolo.
I'm Jose. What is going on?
What's up, guys? And today we have a special guest. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Joseph Martin, and I get to live in Brooklyn, New York.
Holla.
You see,
Better than us. We don't live in Brooklyn anymore.
I was actually driving him in, and I was just the fact that he's in Bay Ridge. I'm just like hating so much.
I know.
Hating is
where I
good.
live.
Hating is good sometimes because it motivates you to step up your game.
Where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from Northeast Texas,
Okay.
and
I
have
hear
lived
sort
in
of
New
a
York City
accent.
for 2 years now. So I'm kind of a baby to New York City.
What part of Texas?
Northeast Texas. So I came from Dallas, moved from Dallas, but I was originally raised way out in the country with cows and all the kind of farmland of Northeast Texas.
That's dope. I spent 6 months in Dallas.
Yo,
Yeah.
that's amazing. It's a
nice
great
out there.
place.
It's free.
They found out that he doesn't belong, so they send him back. That's exactly.
Well, I'm glad
exactly
you're back.
That's what it felt. Yeah, it's good to be back. Believe me. Texas was great. Don't get me wrong, but something about New York.
I remember that day that I picked you up from the airport. We acted like we hadn't seen each other for years.
Yeah. It was only 6 months.
It was 6 months.
Wow.
It was like a movie scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what's crazy though? Coming here, I don't know if how you felt when you saw it, but
Yeah.
coming from the airport home, the drive, I was like, New York is so dirty. Texas is so clean. Like
Yeah.
even the city, Dallas City, is like not like Manhattan. Like Manhattan's dirty. Dallas City is like it looks like somebody just did it. Like they just made it.
Yeah,
It's like so
it's
clean.
totally different.
Yes.
So that definitely took a little bit of getting used to.
But I like the culture out there. The culture out there is great. Nice people. Everybody's friendly.
Do you think that's because you're like sort of like a slut and you kind of mix in any crowd?
I don't know what you're talking about, bro.
You're social.
I get along with
you are
people.
a social slut, like a media whore slut. You are. You're laughing because
I just get along with people. That's
Yeah, right.
I'm just a nice
Yeah,
guy,
right.
I guess.
Or is that a Puerto Rican thing?
I don't know. I get along. I don't know. Everywhere I went, Dallas was like so like. I guess New York, you're kind of more open to talk to people because you kind of have to. You're kind of crammed in together. So when I got out to Texas, I was just like, "Hey, what's up?" Oh, get to the register and order something. I'll just start spark a conversation.
Yeah, I missed that when I came to New York because especially being raised out in the country in Northeast Texas, you know almost everyone. So actually we would wave at strangers as we're driving down the road. Almost every stranger, every car we pass, we wave at them. In the grocery store, you talk and you say hi to people. You may not know them and you talk to them. In Dallas as well, is still very friendly. And thankfully, when I moved to New York, I've lived in 2 great neighborhoods that are still very kind of community oriented.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I still got somewhat of the friendliness and kind of getting to talk to people. but it's still a little bit different than Texas.
It has to be.
We don't even know the people upstairs.
They got evicted. Can you?
Oh, they did get evicted?
They get evicted. That's an update. And if you were on the show more, Noel, you would know these things. This guy hasn't been around for a hot minute, and we're suffering here in heat. And we haven't even started. Which is crazy. You guys just saw a clip, and we are talking about the Christian life, the Christian walk, and we're opening up the conversation to you guys. The topic is what it is, and we challenge you guys to really think outside the box. Take a moment, whether you're a believer or not, whether you have a faith or not, take a second to just listen. Put your heart, put your feelings, your preconceptions, your past thoughts aside for one moment and just take a listen and challenge yourself to think outside the box or the shoes that you walk in every day. And I leave that to you, sir. Tell us a little more about yourself and pretty much what you do. Like, what do you do for career?
Yeah.
You live in Brooklyn. What's your background? And what's your current mission?
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was raised in Christian ministry. My dad did Christian ministry, and I did that. I started off doing all kinds of different things for nonprofits. When I was 19 is when I first got my first job. Did that all the way up until moving to New York. And then moved to New York and came on staff as an operations manager for a nonprofit organization here in the city. Took a step back from that in 2018 and went kind of just part-time work and really took a sabbatical, a time off. I would really reached a place of burnout and so needed some time away from a lot of the pressure of leadership. And so was able to take a step back. Now I get to work for the church that I go to in Brooklyn, and then I also get to do bookkeeping, and I provide bookkeeping to a nonprofit and to a another company as well.
Dope.
That's actually. You think of when I think of people who are non-profit. This is because this is a GED show.
Sure.
For a hot minute.
Sponsored by
Good Enough Diplomas. For a while, I was like, how do you guys get paid then?
We make no money.
No money,
profits.
right?
Yeah.
It's free. You work for free.
Yeah. No, so I mean, so it's just, I think for nonprofits, it's just, people that are, where the mission is actually the driving factor of success more than money.
Yeah.
So that's the main distinction. And so I would really say my mission in this season is really to be a place of welcome for hurting people. And so while that may not be always directly tied into what pays my bills, that's what I live for. And so
I think that's a lot. I'm only speaking from my cultural background.
Sure.
I feel like that idea was never, it's not passed on. It's not, that idea, that mindset isn't, it's you grew up, get a job, pay your bills, take care of your family. The idea of go do something you are passionate about, right? And I'm not the first one who said this, that's like, imagine if we all were doing what we love doing. Wouldn't that make the world a better place? Wouldn't that really solve a lot of issues if people actually went to work wanting to do what they want to do, and then they turn around and they're getting paid for it?
Yeah.
Right? They're able to provide for themselves and their families.
Yeah.
To them, they feel like they're getting off. They're meaning off. It's, I'm getting paid to do something. So you rarely see individuals, in my opinion, maybe because I don't know anybody. You rarely see people, and when you do find that person that has that has that mentality, you're like, it's so strange.
I think that
you see something different in that person.
Like intentionally, I don't think I would have done something like that in the past. But do you remember? I don't know if you ever heard of God Belongs in My City. It's a prayer walk.
I have heard of it. I'm not super familiar with it.
So it's
though.
just a prayer walk that happens in the city. Every year we walk down Broadway, basically. From you have two locations meeting. One is in Central Park. The other one is in Battery Park. So like
Okay.
two, like in the middle of the island and the bottom of the
Yeah.
island, and we meet in Times Square.
Wow,
So-
nice.
That came about as just like a ministry we were doing. Like we weren't even trying to make a nonprofit out of it. But eventually we grew to the point where we had to like actually fill out official paperwork and stuff.
Wow.
So if it was like, okay, you got to start doing this ministry, not get paid, and you just do it, I would have been like, I don't know if I can handle that. But because it grew out of our passions, then it was just like nature, you know.
Yeah.
And honestly, we didn't really get paid for any of this. We just,
Yeah.
and then it's crazy. We talked to the guy that does the bookkeeping for us. He's a lawyer in Queens. And he's like, all right, so one time we sat down with him at the 7-year mark and we kind of talked about it.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, in 7 years, you guys made about $1 million. And we're like, where's the money? $1 million.
The money went in pizza.
Yeah.
90% of the money
Yeah.
went in pizza
That's
for
where
the
it went.
kids.
So when we went back and looked at it, we took a lot of the money and we just gave it away to like ministries.
Yeah.
So like they said, hey, we need T-shirts for whatever. We're like, all right, we'll pay for it. Or we're gonna do a big event, but we can't afford food. I was like, all right, we'll pay for that. And all the money went to that. And the only time we got paid was right before I got married. We were talking about, okay, we worked here for about 7 years or whatever. Let's figure out, we should probably make something out of it. So what we did was they just wrote a small check for me and my wife, and we just put it all towards our wedding. So it all worked out like, and then still to this day nobody gets paid. It's still going, and nobody's getting paid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
it's a literal non-profit. It's no
Actually,
profit.
the only profit the only person that really made a profit was the pizzeria across the street.
Yeah, yeah.
They made so much
They
money.
they're
Insane.
They've grown. They actually redid it. It looks nice.
Yeah?
I took a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think I'm super thankful for my parents because I really attribute much of that to them. Because I really saw from a very young age that money was not the primary driving factor for them in terms of what they were called to do. But their calling and their passion and what they felt like they were supposed to do in the world and the impact they were supposed to make was the number one thing. And then they were like, money will come if we do what we're supposed to do. God will take care of us, was really what my dad said. And so I really was really blessed to grow up in that kind of an environment. And I think that really positioned me for being able to step into, okay, my life is a little unconventional in terms of what I do career wise. And that's okay. As long as I'm fulfilling the purpose that I'm called to do.
That's such a hard lesson to learn.
I mean,
It's
first
not
of
about
all,
money.
what we were taught, if anything, was this is how not to live life. Don't do what we're doing. Don't have 6 kids. But I can't imagine, that's. I mean, think about the head start that you get when you get that perspective from such a young age.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like we're now just getting it, and we're like, I'm too old. I'm about to be 40.
Yeah. It's about perspective because I was reading something about Chinese language. I think it's Chinese language, like Mandarin. They don't like if you say I run, I ran, I whatever like this past tense. Future tense, in the language they don't really have that. So when they talk about future things, it sounds like they're talking about right now. So it's like I'm going to school I'm going to school so I can become a doctor. They say no, I'm going to school. I'm a doctor. So like your passions kind of change the way you seek things.
You
the
see
way you do
yourself.
things. Yeah.
At the end,
And they say that's why a lot of them are very successful with careers because they don't look at it like I gotta work towards something. They're like I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of changes the way you view things.
Yeah, and I think and yet there's still a growing process for me. I think even when it was about my passions and it wasn't just about the money, I reached the place where I thought I always wanted to be, which was really serving in leadership for a Christian organization that was doing great work. And I reached that place in 2017 where I'm being able to lead teams and support people and really make a big difference on a systematic kind of way. And found that I was deriving so much of my value from that drove me into a personal bad place because I didn't just find my value from who I was, but from what I did. And because of that, it really led me into really a really difficult place of depression, and a really, really low place, and eventually had to take a step back, and kind of rediscover, what does it mean to work? What does it mean to live my life? Not just about trying to achieve stuff, not just trying to, move forward, in terms of position or power or any of those kind of things, but just for who I am, as a person, and really learning that. And so it's been a long journey, on that.
You're touching on a lot of things in that comment alone.
Yeah.
I went into like 5 conversations, and I'm almost done with all of them, in questions, because you're talking about, just as a human being, we get to the place, and it's usually at a younger age, right, where you start asking yourself, who am I and how do I fit in this picture, this world? We all face this thing where it's like, I have to provide for myself, but I also want to be happy.
Yeah.
And so you're bringing that point up, and you mentioned the word depression, and then I'm like, oh, depression. How does someone who sees themselves, and I'm sure as young people, as young adults, we're constantly debating or questioning, what our next move is, or like you said, who am I? Who do I see myself being in the future? You get into this rut or this depression. How do you see yourself out of that? What's the best advice you would give to your audience? Then I got another 4 questions that follow that, and it leads into that, but mainly depression. Yeah, I challenge you. Go ahead.
So specifically on depression.
On depression.
Yeah.
How did you see yourself out of that?
Yeah.
Where do I fit in this
Yes.
life? What do I
Yes.
do as a career?
Absolutely.
How did you get
Absolutely.
Yeah, can I say too also that when I've been doing youth ministry for about 10 years now, and the kids before, when 10 years ago, they dealt with a whole different set of issues than the kids nowadays have. The kids back in the day weren't as much depressed as they were dealing with a lot of bad homes, living in the street, gang violence, shootings, stuff like that. These kids nowadays are dealing a lot more with depression, a lot more. And I think that's a lot to do with social media, that they rely so much. Just like you said, finding yourself who you are, they find themselves on social media. This is who I am. So when some people attack them, there's no getting away. It's not like I can transfer schools and separate myself.
Yeah.
That thing follows you forever.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are dealing with this depression and anxiety,
Yes. Yeah. And so I would really say to understand why I was experiencing depression, I have to go back to the underlying aspects of shame that I lived with for so long. And so shame specifically over being attracted to guys. And as a Christian and as someone in ministry, experiencing this and really not knowing what to do with it and feeling a lot of shame over that. And so then that shame going from shame into self-hatred, and really that process is really when I started going into depression. So it's this kind of conglomerate of I'm in a position in which I'm trying to find my value from what I'm doing, and I'm trying to be valuable by how good I am, and then I've got all this internal shame and self-hatred that I'm not really letting people know that's going on, but it's a deep part of the inside part of me. And then I'm also in this place of, okay, I'm looking at my future. So I've got where I always thought I wanted to be, and now I'm looking at my future, and I'm not really sure what my future looks like for me. And so I think in this place of shame, I would say for people out there that are going through depression, for whatever reason, that are facing shame for whatever reason, self-hatred, whatever that looks like for you, it really had to start with me realizing I needed help. So trying to be a very self-sufficient kind of person for so long. I never wanted to be a bother. That was like one of my worst fears, is that I would bother someone. And so really never wanted to bother and inconvenience other people. And so to admit, and really my first place that I really had to come to this place of admitting is, even though theologically I knew that I always needed God, I had to come to this place where I realized I had nothing unless he was going to come in and help me. And it was just a place of utter brokenness. And that's the place I had to reach first. I had to reach that place of, I can't do this anymore and I've got to have help. And so reaching out to God was really my first place. And then after that, reaching out to people, safe people that were in my life. I remember in this time, in this tension of knowing I needed someone in close proximity to me that I could be able to tell what's going on in my life, that I could tell about this depression and kind of this, at this point, thoughts of, I don't want to live anymore. And these kinds of really deep and dark thoughts that I never thought I would have. And I remember this older man that was part of the organization that I was serving, and he was mentoring people in our organization. And I remember just watching him and seeing that he seemed to be really safe. It didn't matter what people were facing. He just seemed to be a really safe person. And so I tentatively opened up to him. And I saw that he welcomed me in. He walked alongside me. He cared for me in that. And I think then that positioned me to be, okay, I found a safe person, and then be able to slowly expand that as other safe people were in my life. So I would really say, talk to someone. You have to realize that you need help. You can't get through this alone.
Okay, so I first of all, again, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah.
And in your commentary, I just want to tell the audience members that if you are having thoughts of suicide, please reach out to someone. There are hotlines. We'll add that in the bio. Yeah. When you say finding that safe person, I just also want to encourage individuals that I'm sure it must have been this, like, I can't imagine the challenge of opening up to someone. And when you made that decision, you must have been asking yourself, is this the right person? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to look at me this way? Are they going to say something about it? I'm asking, was the fear, was it harder to say it, or was it harder waiting for the response?
That's a great question. And I would say, because much of my story is about me carrying most of my shame for many, many, many years in silence. So not telling people. So part of my story is that just in general, I was very private, didn't really let people in. And so that fear started with, can I open up? So what does this look like? And so there was a deep fear there.
So that when you spoke to this person you felt safe with, you told them about your attraction. And
yeah.
the fear was how they're, because it's a religious organization.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think there's two fears. Yeah. There's the one fear is just me being able to overcome the walls that I had built up. Yeah. And there's this deep
you've been
prison that shame puts you in. Shame puts a person in a deep, deep prison and starts erecting these walls. And for me, it was over 20 years of various levels of shame. 12 years on was when I started really kind of experiencing this attraction toward guys. But even before that, other areas of shame and these false senses of guilt and all these kind of things that I carried and really kind of left inside. So I think I first had to overcome that. But then the fear was also, how is he going to respond? And so I would say for people that are out there that are saying, like, yeah, I want to open up, I'm super scared, but then I also am not sure if this is going to be a safe person, I would say test it out with something small.
Okay.
So test out with being vulnerable with something really, really small, that you can be vulnerable with that person. If that person is a person that leans into that and that welcomes that vulnerability, that says, man, thank you for sharing. I really honor that you shared with me. then you know that's probably going to be a safe person that you can open up to more.
Yeah.
Because I think I was at a very vulnerable time in which if I open up my heart to someone after having such deep walls and then they don't respond well, I'm only further devastated.
You're
and I
right.
think most people in a very vulnerable space need to start small. If that person leans away and changes the topic and says, hey, the weather's really great today, you know that's probably not going to be a safe person for you.
Yeah.
Give me an
Or
example.
if that person, yeah, go ahead.
Give me an example of something small.
So for something small could be, man, I've had a really hard time over the last 2 weeks at work. I really don't feel like I've been at my best.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like I am struggling and I don't know who to reach out to.
Okay.
Could be something like that. It's fairly general. It's not saying all the deepest, darkest parts of me. If that person is like, yo, things are always going to get better, just hang on.
Yeah.
If they immediately jump to kind of a dismissive,
I hate work
positive comment. And I mean, there's great things for positivity, but if it's a dismissive, positive comment, that's probably not going to be a safe person for you to open up to.
Yeah. Quit your job. I got a job for you, bro.
Yeah, we all hate
Yeah.
work Mondays, right?
Yeah. Or if they just jump on the bandwagon and drag you further down, that's probably also not going to be the best person for you in a vulnerable space. So
Yeah.
it's really trying to test out with
Yeah.
people in your life, who are those safe people that I can open up to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so test small.
So, okay. So then, wow. So you mentioned there's two parts to it. For the person that's receiving this information, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. So
person
specifically a person that someone is coming out to.
Not only just
Or
coming-
that's
they're
just being
conveying-
vulnerable with.
They're being vulnerable with. What do you give that person that's receiving someone's heart?
Yes.
What advice
yes.
would you give to that person?
Yeah.
Like what worked?
Yes.
What worked with the individual that opened up to you that you would pass along to the next person?
Yeah. I think so many times a lot of us want to fix situations. And a lot of times we aren't comfortable with messy situations or with just sitting with pain. We a lot of times avoid pain. We a lot of times avoid suffering. It's kind of a natural thing to do. We don't like it.
Yeah.
And so we want to avoid it. And so many times the easiest thing to do is to jump straight to trying to make everything better for that person. So it's like encouragement. I need to say something. And so really I would say is your presence, being fully present for that person is really what they need. And a lot of times it's keeping your mouth shut.
You know what's funny? I used to be a New York State chaplain, and then one of the courses, actually the overall ministry, what they called it was ministry of presence. They're like, just be there. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Just give them a little tap on the shoulder, like, hey, I'm gonna be here for as long as you need me to be here. And I'm just here for you.
I did a semester in Nyack College, and I'm still paying for it now, 12 years later. And one of the youth ministry classes the professor was saying was that, one of the biggest things that I notice in church is that people, with their fake smile, if you don't want to smile, don't wear it. People can feel the genuine. They could feel where you're coming from. So don't smile.
Almost like you're holding a smile for a picture for too long.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think it really is that presence. And a lot of times it's just saying, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
To just really enter in with compassion that's deeper than just a sympathy. Like, oh man, that must really suck for you.
Yeah.
But to really say, hey, I'm going to walk alongside you. And I'm so sorry you're going through this, but I'm going to be with you. I can't fix it. And a lot of times that's very humbling for those of us that someone's coming to us. Because a lot of times we think, okay, they're entrusting me with this. Now I've got to fix it.
Yeah. No, you're telling...
Sometimes it's just being with them.
In other words, if you are confronted with someone who's opening their heart to you, they're not coming to you to get the answer to their problem.
They just want to let it out.
They're coming to you because it's so heavy. they're trusting you to carry it with them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
What about the religious Christian aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
Because that must be. I mean, I can imagine that's part of the weight you carried.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Just know everybody's talking about this thing around you, but they don't know what's inside of you.
Yes.
I'm also hearing in the background somewhere, in some opinion, well, he's not Christian.
Yeah. I think that what's been an interesting part of my journey in me experiencing being attracted to guys is I've never been in a relationship with a man in a romantic sense. And so I've always been in the church. I've really followed the historic teachings of the church on a sexual ethic. And yet, even though I have done that, there has been a deep sense of struggle for me for a long time with how do I live with this presence of being attracted to guys, and then realizing that many people simply just because I am attracted to guys, I am immediately labeled, a lot of times labeled as outside the church, or not, that it can't be reconciled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what has been a really beautiful place for me is really finding God's love, and in the gospel, believing that Jesus invites every single person toward himself.
To be in an environment where you feel like people are pushing you away, but you have to dig your feet down hard into the gospel.
Yes.
Knowing that those people are the ones that is pushing you.
Yeah, and I think that's also for me, I've wanted to try to give grace to people. So many people that have responded the most negatively to me being open about what I experience and this aspect of my life is that they've never experienced many times a person that is walking the path that I am walking, in terms of that's still really in the church, that maybe even in leadership within a church, and that are also being open and honest about what their life experience is like. Especially in this kind of a taboo kind of thing in the church sense. And so I think it's really, it's been difficult, just to be personally honest. Even words from people that I knew maybe speaking from a place of not as much understanding, it's still easy to internalize the difficult or hateful words.
Yeah.
And so that actually does push me back to the gospel, because in those moments I realize, man, Jesus is who I'm trusting in. And so the opinions of other people, there's always been people that have had negative opinions of those who follow Jesus. And so sometimes that comes from the religious crowd, as well as the others. And so it's not discounting many people, and many people have a lot of concerns. They have a lot of things that they want to be able to try to wrap their heads around. They're trying to understand this as well. And so I really want to walk within kind of a grace posture toward the people in the church that don't have as much of a accepting posture toward the LGBT community, or toward just people who experience attraction toward people of the same sex, or those who experience gender dysphoria, or any other kind of variant and in terms of sexual experience or whatever.
People that come out hard against that drive me insane. I cannot deal with it. Don't get me wrong, I understand, but what are you doing? Like, you are not without sin. What are you know what I'm saying? Like, they come out way too strong, and there's one particular part, but everything else is just like open for whatever you want to do. And it drives me crazy. It's like you're picking and choosing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think for me, what has helped me, honestly, is that I used to be that person that was very self-righteous looking back on it. I didn't think I was in the moment. I just thought I was standing for truth and all of this kind of stuff. And so but looking back on it, there were many ways in which I was this kind of self-righteous and I could immediately judge a lot of people for a number of different things. And so because I have been there and I've had to go through the breaking process of coming to grips with really who I am, and with all the various aspects of my personhood. And because I've also been broken through the life experiences, the hurts and the pains, I've experienced some of this brokenness. I approach life from a different perspective. I approach my faith from a different perspective. And I realize some people haven't yet gone through that process.
And you said something before about like taking a step back and reevaluating your life, whatever, like looking back, reflecting on it. And I feel like I've done that a few times in my life. And I feel like it's healthy in a sense. When you just take a step back and you look at what you've done and what you're planning for the future and who you are, the people you're around, and you're like, all right, what's good and what's bad in this situation, you know? And I've done that a few times in my life where when I became a Christian for the first little bit of it, I didn't change anything. Yeah. I was just a quote unquote Christian, you know? Yeah. And it wasn't until I took a step back and like really looked at what I was doing with my life, and I was like, I have to let things go, and I have to take a step away, and I have to, push deeper into something else. And I was reevaluating, and then a few years later, you look back, you're like, man, that was a good decision. I made a really good decision, and let me push a little bit harder now. Yeah. And even me speaking to you today, I feel like I'm in a position where I'm taking a step back and looking at my life. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do next? Yeah. Who am I going to be for the next few years? Yeah. You know? Yeah.
And I would really say in terms of being a Christian, this is the process that God works us on. It's really this process of transformation. And it means us having to reevaluate our lives from time to time. Yeah. That what was maybe where we were for a season is not where we'll always be. And so I think just experiencing this transformation in my own life, and like having to go through it's difficult, but it's also super important and it's super needful for growth. It's really, I think, in a very simple way, that's what growth looks like. Yeah. It looks like constantly having to reevaluate and change and progress. And I would really say for me, I really feel it's a lot of times it's fueled by God's work of transformation in my life.
You've opened up not only on your own platform, but you've also this past Sunday have had the opportunity to open up and tell your story at the church, we'll also put a link there for individuals to hear what that was, and get more of a backstory. So you did that. You did it in front of, I don't know, there was like 200 people, 150 people there that are like staring at you. And one of your functions at this church is to greet, right? Yeah. Is to greet, be the face.
Can I say something too? He's one of the best greeters in any church I've ever in my life.
I almost, that's, okay, so I always go to, I have a confession.
Confess.
This is my confession. I'm struggling with this, but I go to church. I get to church when, right after the preacher would say, the pastor would say, go on and greet your neighbor. Once all that's done, then I creepily walk in. Okay.
Part's over.
And that means he's already inside. I avoided you as much as I can because you're good at greeting. You get the sense of a genuine hello.
Yeah, it's not a fake smile.
It's not a fake smile. Yeah. The hug is like, I don't know if we do all this here in Brooklyn, but okay. And I try my best to avoid you on my way out. Like, if you really look, you see me like, as if I'm a cartoon trying to sneak out the door.
And I don't know if you could teach that. I think that's something that has to come from the heart, you know?
Yeah, you're right. It has to come from the heart. So, okay, you have this function to greet people. I would say 90% of the people who came in there, they did not know they were going to learn more about you. And now they have to hug you on their way out. Was there a difference in your interactions? I'm not here to call anyone out.
Sure.
Right? We're not about that or anything like that.
Sure.
We're trying to get your perspective because it's insane to me. And I'm talking to the believer, the person that goes to church, and I'm talking to the person that's not. First of all, no one listens to the show. But if they were, I'm talking to both parties, and I'm challenging both parties. This is uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you, in a religious community and in a faith community, be vulnerable? A lot of times I think a lot of spaces within churches, we've not created space for vulnerability. And so it makes it really awkward for a lot of people. Then if someone is vulnerable to that, don't know quite what to do with you. What I am really thankful for is the church community that I get to be a part of, is a space that I believe prioritizes vulnerability. And that I am not the first story of someone being super vulnerable with their personal experience that I've got to hear within our church community. And so I'm really blessed by that. I was also blessed that before walking in and sharing my story, I felt like I had a very safe community of people that were going to love me. I knew that. I knew that because a number of people within the church had already heard my story to certain degrees, and they had shown me deep love. Afterwards, I would say I was given so much love. I would say this is honestly, I wish I could say this is always the case.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that. I've had other experiences that I've not received that from other faith communities.
But people sort of like shun you. Like, oh,
yeah, they don't know quite what to do with me. And I've also had to walk with friends, a number of friends that are LGBT, and that have not been welcomed by their churches. I've friends that have been asked to leave their churches after they've shared, after they come out.
I feel like that's like a hospital kicking out a patient for being sick.
Yeah,
It's
been very painful, and so I think we have to realize this reality. And as a church, honestly, getting to be able to now be in a position to walk alongside the other leaders in our church, that we a lot of times have to repent just for the way that we have rejected people a lot of times, because we didn't understand them, and we couldn't quite wrap our heads around it, and we just rejected them. And so I think we have to start with that place. But I am thankful in my personal experience. Afterwards, I received so much love, so many people. And by the way, you don't have to hug me if you come to the church. But
it's your fault.
It is my fault.
You're the enabler in this situation.
But I am super thankful. I was surrounded by love. I was also really blessed because a number of people being vulnerable helped unlock an area of vulnerability in their hearts.
Yeah, I was going to get to that point.
For their own stories.
So you're seeing people uncomfortable in their own skin.
Yeah.
Like now it's something for them.
Yeah.
That you're going through this, you're walking in this, you're firm in this, and now this person, I have this thing I didn't realize, or maybe buried themselves these preconceptions or what they were taught. Yeah. And we were talking in the car that a lot of things aren't even experienced. Like we form opinions these days based on other people's experiences or what we hear. Yes. It's not a personal, I went through this, therefore I have this perspective against these group of people or this group of people. So now you have potential individuals that are now like, they're sitting with this thing. Yeah. And that was sort of the point of following up. This is to me with a follow-up from your time with the church and opening up with the church this past Sunday was a follow-up. Yeah. Because I'm sure there are more questions. I'm sure there are more, and hopefully we can dive into. That was the purpose of doing this. And it was funny because a mutual friend of ours, Jeremy, he turned it into like this competition thing. When I told him I was gonna have you on the show, well, I was wanting to invite you to the show, and Jeremy's like, "Yo, bro, you late, bro? Justin already got him scheduled." And I'm like, "How did this turn into?" If anything, this is a good thing because people have a reference to go back to if they want to learn more and ask questions. And I'm sure. I know we're gonna put your website up, and you're a person that you're approachable, and you can you can this. If you don't have a safe person in your life, you should reach out to this guy so you can get a sense of what that person feels like. That's what I would suggest to people who are listening to this episode. Definitely do not listen to these two individuals here. No. But I actually want to touch with you, Noel, because you always jump the gun and don't wait till the session starts. The service is over. People are heading out. The youth are running. You're the youth
pastor, leader, something. I don't know what you would call it. Honestly,
you're the youth leader.
Director. That sounds right.
Hey, easy there, buddy. It's GD, right?
I can't spell it, so I can't use it.
You can't use it.
Love that.
So, tell us about that experience of the youth coming and.
I don't want to get into too much details,
right?
But
right.
I was doing Sunday school, so I wasn't in the sanctuary at the time. But they came pouring into the room after all the kids left, they all came running in, and some of them had tears in their eyes. Some of them wanted to, let's pray, let's talk, and I was with them for like an hour, talking with them, we have a wide variety of youth, like what they're dealing with in their lives, and some of them are dealing with those issues as well. And from the beginning, I've always said the same thing, and I've said it for years. I don't care what you're dealing with, who you are, what you like, any of that, because none of that matters to me, because what matters is Jesus. Are you going to meet Jesus or not? Because really, at the end of the day, that's really what matters, right? Let God deal with you the way he wants to deal with you. But right now, we're going to talk about how you can have a better relationship with Christ. So it was just crazy. I had no idea what was going on in Sanctuary. Kids come pouring in, crying and stuff. I'm like, all right, let's have a sit down. Let's talk. Let's pray. And now I'm trying to work it out with some of the leaders now, where we can take the boys and the girls and have like a guys' night and girls' night, like individually. Nice. Because when we're together, it's kind of difficult to talk about certain things. Sure. So, that's right. So yeah, I just want to thank you, man. Like you sparked something for sure.
Thank you.
You've opened up a conversation that wasn't open before.
That's an interesting thing that you say thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, right? This is like uncharted territory that is now open for business. You know what I'm saying? That's what it feels like. It feels like before it was kind of like, we could kind of touch this, let's try not to get too hard. But now it's just like floodgates open, let's go,
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
really honored. Really honored to be able to walk alongside people, and really honored for anyone that can find hope through my story. Yeah.
And it just shows a lot of people to be brutally honest from who you are, and God will work through all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? That brutal honesty, because God obviously doesn't want you to lie and stuff, right? So that brutal honesty is just going to be so, you're going to see people's reaction, and you're going to get a feel of, okay, this person is for me, this person is not for me. It kind of helps you build a better community when everybody's honest with their situation in their lives, So that's, I don't know, I'm just, after last Sunday, I'm like, man, this is really interesting, the next few weeks, what's going to be, And it kind of changed our plans too, because we had something else planned for now. We got to change it up. So now we're kind of like,
thank you.
And I really love that Brene Brown, who's a researcher on vulnerability and shame, she says vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. And really what I think what this is, what being vulnerable and trying to, and I think what my story, the way that I am vulnerable is not the way everybody should be vulnerable, to be honest.
Very good.
I think it's actually, I would advise people not to always do exactly the very same things that I've done.
Go into deep details,
in terms of, because you need to be vulnerable with safe people and in safe spaces. But there are some people that I would really say I feel a calling toward radical vulnerability. And this is actually a practice that is an ancient Christian practice. St. Francis of Assisi is one who really developed this practice in the Christian tradition, which is being radically vulnerable about their lives, not for themselves so much as for the sake of others. And I'll tell you a quick story. So it was 2018 in June. And at this point, I had come out to the main people in my life that I wanted to know my story. I come out to immediate family members, close friends, my pastor, a few people. And I didn't really feel the need to invite anyone else really into that space in my life. I did not feel that need. And I was walking on vacation by a river, and I'm praying, and I sense so strongly, you're going to share your story with a broader audience. And I will just tell you the terror.
I was just going to... Can you describe... Go ahead.
Okay, so the terror I felt was something that was not just an emotional feeling. It was an actual, visceral, physical, like in my bones, I felt terror at the thought of being radically vulnerable with my story.
And that... Was it... You described a voice... A thought.
It was a very strong sense,
and
that's what I'd say.
Like,
and I would say I really feel like it was something God wanted me to do.
Okay,
this is what I feel, and really because as my calling has always been toward people that are hurting. That's been the people that I've gravitated to. It's always been the people on the margins. I did a lot of stuff with kids. Through my teenage and early 20s years, that almost every single one of them had super traumatic experiences in their life. Fetal alcohol syndrome, ADHD, ADD, dysfunctional families, childhood, all kinds of abuse, all these kinds of things. And so really loved those people, walked alongside refugees, people who were hurting. It's just been every part of my life has really been really geared toward that. And so I realized I was either going to always be dodging my story and just be kind of evading it,
weaving
to be able to help people, or I was going to be vulnerable and be willing to say, hey, I've experienced some deep pain. My pain may not look like your pain, but I know what shame feels like. I know what fear feels like. I know what guilt feels like. I know what the prison of silence feels like.
Oh, man.
And there is a better way. And so it was really, I would say, very much a calling.
I was specific. I was specific to your description of what you referred to, your sense that this is coming from God, because I've experienced similar things, and it. You know, at one point was go talk to this complete stranger, and I want to throw up to the point where I'm sick, that I know I'm supposed to go over there and talk to this person. When I hear people say, Christians, believers say, you know, I'm hearing the Lord told me this was with God, you know, I'm always like, is that feeling the same? Because I felt that. I felt that pain, that this is coming from God, and it's always in that fashion. And I'm saying to myself, I wonder if that's, you know, maybe that's a whole other topic we could go into. But I bring it up only because the way you were describing me, I was starting to feel it again. Like, oh my gosh, I remember feeling that. And then I say to myself, I ask myself, like, wow, okay, so other people are experiencing similar things when they're in their interactions, in their prayers, in their walk with the Creator.
Yeah.
To the LGBT community.
Yeah.
Are you a traitor? Are you a hypocrite?
I would really say.
That's a crazy question.
I would really
To the
say
radical LGBT community.
Well, I think I think I first have to, take a really kind of a step back and kind of say that. So my personal belief is that my faith calls me toward believing in a historic Christian teaching on a sexual ethic, which is reserving genital sexual expression for marriage between a man and a woman. And so that's my personal belief.
That's a very elegant way to say it.
You got us GD guys over there.
So I would say that's where I'm at. Here's the baseline, though, that I think we need to be able to recognize is that every single person, LGBTQ, whatever, deserves respect and deserves love. And that is regardless of belief, regardless of practice. And so I think a lot of times what can be said, like when you mentioned, am I a traitor to the LGBT community? No, I'm not. I may practice my life in a different way than some members of the LGBT community. But I would think when it's really very, I think this goes for any community. It's very easy to stereotype.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to just put them in a box and say, okay, this is what their experience is like. And what we I think realize, and the beauty that I find from my LGBT friends is that our experiences many times do have a lot of commonalities, but then we also have our own unique expressions and differences. And I think there are many things, that I can learn from my other brothers and sisters who experience similar journeys to my own. And I think I am in a difficult place, though, in some sense, because I don't fully have a lot of places that I fit, just to be honest. So I don't really fit in, I do not fit in the crowd that says, I might term of it as an ex-gay crowd that would say, okay, when I came to Jesus, all of a sudden I no longer felt attraction toward the same sex. I'm no longer a homosexual, whatever the language they want to use. I'm not in that crowd. Okay. So, but then I'm also not in the crowd that would affirm marriage between a man and a man, or between a woman and a woman. And so in terms of for myself and for my practice, so I would not be in that crowd. And so I am in this kind of middle place as I try to follow Jesus, and I try to extend grace to both sides on this, because there are people that I do have relationship with that are in a kind of what I might term of as an ex-gay or a once-gay way of life perspective. And so I want to extend grace to them just as well as I want to extend grace to my friends in the LGBT community as well, that their faith would have they have no qualms about same-sex sexual and romantic relationships.
That's a great way of putting it. I asked the question, and when you turned to me and you said that's an interesting question. I do training sometimes when we're updating things at my job, and somebody will always say, "It's a stupid question," but and I stop them there and I say, "The only real stupid question is the one not asked." So please ask. So that's why I'm trying to think of as many questions the audience may have. You know what I mean? And again, you could reach out to the brother yourself. We're gonna put all that up there, but that's where I'm coming from. I'm trying to be like, okay, so this person now, what would they ask? I'm here. What would you ask?
Yeah, and I think that's also many times when maybe someone who's doesn't really have much interaction with the LGBT community. would see it maybe as a monolithic kind of community, meaning it's all just like one little box here.
We tend to do
and
that
so
with
it's like,
families.
and here's the danger, I think, in that, especially from the church. So sometimes the church will say, yeah, the LGBT community, and they refer to it in a way as that it's outside the church. Or they refer to it in a way that, how do we have the church and the LGBT community as if they're completely distinct? What we have to realize is that there are many people within churches that experience attraction toward guys, or girls toward girls, or that experience gender dysphoria, or have different levels of life experience. Now, what I think, so what we can do is we can say the gospel applies to everybody. Jesus invites every single person to come in and to be loved by him, and then in that love for Jesus, to follow Jesus in what he says.
Because I think that when it comes down, when you drive a separation there, what you're saying is Jesus is for us. You guys are over there.
Yeah. And I think it really erects a wall sometimes. And I don't know that it's always intentional. Sometimes it may be intentional. Sometimes it may not be. But it can just come, and this can go for any group of people. It can be like, we are for we're for a millennial generation. And then you exclude all the people that are non-millennials. So it can go for any of those kind of things. And I'm talking specifically in terms of faith practice. There's great times that you have specific community things to support a particular community. But in terms of our faith, that we are not just erecting boxes to drop people in. We all, those who follow Jesus, all get to be in the Jesus box, so to speak.
Jesus box.
Yo, this guy. I like the way you explain things. So we stepped into the LGBT community. What would you say to that church that's dealing with something similar to this? And what advice would you give their leaders, the members that are going through a church that, Jose over here, we found out he was gay, and what advice would you give leaders that are dealing with something like that are dealing with something like, for you mentioned that there are some that are in the youth, that are some that are dealing with similar issues. What advice would you give to a leader that how do you, without sounding like you're going, I picture the person that says that they're a Christian and they're screaming gays go to hell, or they're screaming whatever, condemning others, judging others.
Let me say to that, I have my wife's cousin is gay, and he grew up in church. And he doesn't go to church anymore. He does his own thing. So, but every once in a while, there's a party or a get together. I always see him, and me and him go back and forth. Like, we joke all the time. Like, we're good friends. Yeah. So the other day, I was like, "Hey, man, why don't you come to my church and check it out? I know you had a bad experience over there, but come check out my church." And his response was, "Why? So they could tell me I'm going to hell?" And I was like, "Damn."
That's it. Yeah. That's, how hard it is to reach someone like that?
And I tried telling him, like, no, we're not, we're just an open place. Come hang out with us. Don't worry about the other stuff. Let's just come and hang out and, meet people. Like, I'm trying to, ease him in. But he knows what they're going to tell me. I'm going to go to hell, so I don't want to go.
And our church is not, the church, this church is there's no perfect church. And that's kind of the whole point. That we're here together because we share this idea of wanting to live life the best way possible. And through Christ, we're shown this is the best way. And why? Because I love you that much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would really say for leaders, interacting with the subject of LGBT issues is, don't just treat it like an issue. Realize they're people. There's unique stories. Try to get to know those stories. So for leaders, Get to know the people in your church. Get to know those who maybe, if there are people that are open about their experiences. And then I would say, look at the people and look at them. I would say, secondly, would be to really teach the church. If you are a church that holds to a historic teaching on the Christian sexual ethic, teach the church about sexuality. It's broader than just this one application. I think what a lot of times we don't have a biblical understanding of what sexuality means, of what family means, of what love looks like. I would say start there. Start there. And then the third thing that I would say, and this is something that I think I've really learned from my affirming friends. So affirming meaning that that would believe that it is fine for Christians to be in same-sex sexual relationships. So from my affirming friends is clarity. I think it is important that a church be able to say what they do and do not believe. Sometimes people, what does not need to happen is, and it's this tension for churches, is how do we hold to what we believe the gospel says while also holding open arms to every single person. I think we can do that with clarity. So we open those arms of love, and also be able to be clear about what we believe. I think everyone deserves that honor of being able to be able to understand that. So the way that can look like for different churches may look different, and that's I think a very deep process. And so I do know of a number of churches that are going through these processes of how did they do this well, and I think it's something that leaders should work with. So see it as people, really focus on what the Bible says about sexuality in general, and then thirdly, be clear about where you stand.
Yeah, I think the open conversation is super important. You know, I think a lot of it goes unsaid. So kind of like we're talking past each other or at each other.
Yeah.
And I think the
talk to each other.
Yeah. And because the thing is, when you talk past or at each other, you're kind of not even looking at the person like a person. You're looking at them like a topic.
Yeah.
You know, and I think talking to each other, you really get a feel of who the person is, what they're about, and then you can really talk to them and their situation better. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that part where you said, my favorite parts of what your response was that don't look at their issues as issues. Look at it as an opportunity. Right? Look at it as an opportunity to fellowship with that person as a leader, as they walk with them. That was really good point. Man, I mean, I think we could keep talking about this. I have like another 10 questions, but I'm trying to keep things on a nice schedule to keep the listeners that don't exist, not too bored out of the conversation. We're going to have your information up. This is an open door. You're more than welcome to come back. And we could talk about something else. We could dive into other topics. You don't have to come all the way down and visit this basement. You could call in, and I want to leave the floor open for any final thoughts or any suggestions. Tell us your website, where we could reach you. So I'll leave the floor open. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's just been an honor to be with both of you today, and to be with all of those watching and listening in today. I would say you can find me at josephdavidmartin.com, and you can be able to follow me there, and you can subscribe and stay in touch with what happens in my story. And then I think I would just finally just want to lead people with there is hope regardless of what you're facing, regardless of the messiness that you may be going through. there is hope. There is a brighter and better day ahead. I truly believe that. And I've experienced that in my life. For me, this has been Jesus transforming me from a place of living in shame and fear to experiencing much more freedom. And I am so thankful for that. And so it's just my joy to be able to walk alongside others. So thank you.
Amen.
Amen. I don't think we ever finished this episode. Amen. That's how horrible we are as walking Christians. Yeah, so this has been The Basement. Again, we're part of this new network called Inconsistent Media. Share this. Open up the conversation. If you are struggling or you know, there are safe places. This gentleman is definitely someone who is a safe place. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves out there, guys.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Inconsistent.